Hi friends, David here from Above AVL and Learn Stage Audio. And today I want to talk about 5 ways that you and me and everyone can make their life more difficult when mixing live audio. Okay, this is going to be a fun one. Let's dive in. If you don't know me, I've actually been mixing audio for around 20 years now and been training people for 15 or so. One of the things I see, whether it's in a church or another context, is really any mix of these 5 things are all pretty easy things that people mess up all the time. And, even the most seasoned professionals get lazy on. And it really ends up affecting your mix and making your life way more difficult when you're mixing live audio. These 5 things are just really easy, simple things that when you get them right, they're going to make things work really well. So, number one is bad mic placement. I can't tell you how many times when working with somebody new, or even somebody that's been doing audio for a while. You sit there and you're mixing and you're like, okay, you know what? This guitar, or acoustic guitar is a bad example, but these drums, right? We go find some drums here and we find a kick drum. A kick drum is actually like the perfect example because you're in here and you're just like going around and just trying to get these mids to sound right. Why are they not sounding right? Maybe I need to boost. Maybe I need to cut, right? And you're sitting around there and you're just fiddling with the EQ and just being like, man, it just is not sounding right. And this can happen on drums. This can happen on even guitars. Like a second ago, I was talking about an electric guitar. And it's like, you know what? It's just not crisp enough. It's a little muddy. And you're just sitting there and you're like, okay, guitar's muddy. Let's try 400K. Let's try cutting that a little more. No, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the day, all you needed to do was get your butt off your seat and fix the mic placement. Okay, so that's like my number one, way that you can really shoot yourself in the foot when you're mixing is if something doesn't sound right. And this was drilled into me early on in my days of mixing audio. I was thankful that I got paired up early on with an older guy who had been mixing audio for a long time and was very, very good. And, before you do anything, he'd be like, stop touching that EQ. What you need to do is go up there and see if you can fix it with mic placement. Because the truth of the matter is, if you have the right mic, you place it in the right spot, a lot of times you need little to no EQ. In fact, I've seen and worked with and had a lot of friends who work in the touring industry. And some of the biggest groups out there in touring, the majority of the channel EQs are almost flat. They're like high pass only, minor, tiny adjustments, right? Why? Because they get the mic positioning right and they get the perfect mic in. Now, you might be saying, okay, getting the perfect mic for every source is never going to happen in my context. It's a church, different bands, whatever. I get that. But the mic placement, a lot of times, is going to fix things that you're trying to do with EQ that you just don't have to do. Now, getting it right, sure. I mean, you could earn a PhD with the amount of time you spend working with different instruments, finding the way to get the best mic placement, right? But it's so worth it because it makes your mixing life easier. Number two, okay, bad routing choices. Okay, what do I mean by this? The biggest one that I see is if somebody's setting up a system and they're not sure what to do, it's gonna be their main speaker to their sub and their routing choices there. Okay. So if you're new to this, there's a few ways that you can align a main and a sub, or you can set up the crossover. Okay. Meaning that the sub gets the low frequencies, the top gets everything above it. They're typically not making a lot of sound at the same frequencies. They cross over. Okay. And there's a couple ways to do it. The simplest way is, if it's a powered sub, which a lot of, temporary systems today are, even installed systems sometimes are, it's going to have a crossover built in, or your amplifier is going to be crossing over your DSP. And the easy, lazy way to do it is like, okay, come out of your main mix on your sound console, right? You're coming out of your main mix and you're going into your sub and it's crossing over, and you're going into your main and it's crossing over. Okay. But unless you're very limited on outputs, that's about the worst decision you can make. Why? Well, depending on the type of music and what's going around, things like an acoustic guitar, if they bump it or thump, you're going to hear that in the sub, and that's not where you want it. Somebody taps a microphone, you're going to hear it in the sub, and that's not where you want it, right? Somebody drops a microphone, you're going to hear it in the sub. Even just like, okay, we've got a bassist, a kick drum, and a keyboard, right? If we're doing more rock style music and we have a bass, a kick drum, and a keyboard, we typically don't want the keyboard in the subs. But if we just simply cross over everything and everything from the mains goes to the subs, then you're going to get that. It's not going to be as clear as you'd like. The other way that people really mess up their main sub routing, I feel, and there's been, a lot of discussion over this in the past year, is how you send it when you're sending a different mix output. Okay, so let's walk through this really quick. When a lot of times when you're setting up an output for a sub, like here, let's just pretend this is a sub output. Okay, and this is the main output, right? And what you want to do is you really want to set it up so that they have the a comfortable same level of loudness between the two. Meaning that, if I just play some music through the system and I have my main and my sub master fader set wherever they're set, the sound between the two sounds balanced. It sounds the way you want it to be. And yes, there are some genres of music where you have what's called a bass tilt, where you want the bass really high. But a lot of times, honestly, it happens and it's not really called for. But what people do, and the mistake sometimes that people make, is you go in here and you're like, okay, now I'm ready to assign stuff to my subs, and you go ahead and you go find your base and you bring that up, and then you're like, okay, I might bring it up here. Okay, I think that sounds good. Or and then later on, you're mixing, and then you come back and you bring it up further and you crank it way up. Okay, and you're like, okay, now I'm feeling that bass. Okay, the problem with this is when you adjust the level of an instrument independently to a sub versus a main, you end up actually shifting the acoustical crossover point. Okay, and this gets a little bit deeper, but essentially, you end up with a bass that's only in the subs and not in the main, which isn't ideal. Most of the time it's not what you want. You want to hear the higher notes that they're playing, so that if they play a really low note and then they play a little higher, it's around the same level and it sounds appropriate. If you start messing with the level and you're sending more of an instrument to the sub, less to the main, or vice versa, really things get out of balance quick. And then people start then going to the EQ. It's like, okay, now it's kind of not where I need it to be. And so now I'm going to EQ it. And I'm like, okay, now I'm just taking out a bunch of the lows, etc. And, that's really not the best choice. So if you're sending something to a sub, the best thing to do is, every console calls it something different, but the best way to send it is to send it on a mix where it's sending to the main and sub at the same level. And then any tonal adjustments you're making are made at the EQ. Next, disorganization number 3. If you don't have things labeled well, that's why we love grade A gaff tape. We now also have spike tape available, which is awesome. 1/2-inch tape, great for labeling, great for spiking. But if you don't label things well, you don't label where your inputs go, you don't label your console, you don't have a stage plot, it's gonna bite you in the butt more often than not. Knowing where your signals are going from your microphone to your stage box to your console and back out again is going to save your butt more times than you can count. It may seem like extra work when you're setting up or if you're in an installed system, but when something goes wrong, it makes your life 1,000 times easier. Number 4, bad gain structure. So we were kind of talking about something similar when I was just talking about main sub routing in your system. But one of the things we see a lot is people with systems and with mixes that have bad gain structure. In the case of a system, for an example, Sometimes you might have a system, and I've seen this so many times, that's just really overkill for a space. And you might have some powered speakers and you've got them turned down to like 1 out of 10 on the speaker. What you start to get is you'll start to hear hiss in those speakers even when nothing's playing. This is because you're taking the signal so low that noise can creep in various ways. Okay. Similarly, if you have a microphone that's cranked way up and then your main fader's like way down, you can start to have issues, right? You might start clipping that microphone inside the console where, you're maxing it out on the channel, right? And you've got the gain, and the gain is, whoops, and the gain is all the way up, and you're now clipping to where you see you're hitting the red on that channel and it's still not loud enough in your system, right? And so these are the kind of things, it's like hisses and distortion, right? Those are the general things, noise and distortion, that when you don't have your gain structured well, you have these issues and they just make your life more difficult and you don't need them. Number 5, this one's especially for those churches, but also other places, and it is, don't mix from a bad mix position. Yes, I know. You might be saying right now, I can't change my mix position. But the thing is, with most modern digital consoles, even if you're in a place, in a venue, in a church where they've put your mix position in a terrible place and you know it's terrible, the least you can do is get out, get into the audience with a tablet, because any modern digital console, you can do that, and actually hear what it sounds like to the audience or the congregation. If where you mix doesn't sound very, very close to what the congregation or the audience hears, in the case of a band show, then I would push really hard to get that changed. That may take time, but over time, that little tiny investment of being able to move the mix position is going to pay so many dividends in the total mix. Now, I've worked with folks and I've worked with sound people, especially installers, that go, hey, you know what? Like this mix position, for example, my church is against a wall in the back of the room. Okay. It sounds very close to what it sounds like in the room, but it's not quite the same as it is in the seats. A lot of people would say, okay, you have to get it in the seats. It has to be, the person has to be in the middle of the audience. And I don't think that's always the case, but I think you really want it to be close, okay, to be similar, so that you can know as the person who's mixing, okay, like I've listened to it out there. It sounds great. Tonally, things are good here. Maybe, like in the example of my church, it's a little bass heavy at the mix position, which, hey, that doesn't bother me one bit. And B, number 2 is I got to run the vocals a little bit hot because I got a little bit of wall bounce. And in the audience, they come up a little bit softer. Okay. But other than that, sounds great. Right. And so that's what we aim for is, what? Very close to what it sounds like in the audience at the mix position. If you're not in that place, either fixing your system or moving the mix position is going to help so much. And if you're stuck in like a closed booth, there's plexiglass up, etc. in front of you, like I can't encourage you enough to figure out a way to get out of there, even if it's just being on a tablet and being able to check the mix from time to time. Because if you are in a place where you don't hear what the audience hears, then effectively it's the same as putting someone who's literally deaf, who literally can't hear right, in the mix position mixing audio. And you wouldn't do that typically. So why would you put your mix position in a place where the sound isn't great? Right. I hope you enjoyed these 5 things that you can really do to make your life difficult when you're mixing live audio. If you've enjoyed this, then hey, give us a big thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe here. And then next time you need any audio gear, any video gear, any lighting gear, head over to Above AVL. We like to do things differently. We love to help people find the right thing, give you really great advice, give you a personalized quote so that you can get everything you need at the right price. Not only that, but we're here to serve you for the long, long, long term. We want to serve you 3, 4 decades into the future. And so, even if you're just looking for something small, reach out. We're always happy to give you our opinion, help you find the exact right thing, and get it in your hands. If that sounds good, we'll see you at aboveavl.com. Thanks.